The restaurant went silent. Plates froze midair. Forks stopped halfway to mouths, and the hum of chatter collapsed into a cold, uneasy hush. Two men, broad, loud, and mean, stood over a table near the window. Their voices weren't just angry. They were taunting, thick with arrogance, and the kind of confidence that grows when no one ever calls you out. Across from them sat two girls identical. Quiet, calm, their braids matched, their movements mirrored, and their eyes didn't blink. Not once. One of the bullies leaned in close, his shadow cutting across the table. "Didn't you hear me, sweetheart?" he hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "When someone like me tells you to move, you move." His friend laughed, a low, ugly sound. People turned away. No one wanted to get involved. The twins didn't move. They didn't speak. They just looked at each other. One silent glance, no words, no fear. That's when something shifted. The air in the room grew heavy, like the moment before thunder. One twin slowly set down her glass of water. The other tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The bullies grinned, mistaking calm for weakness. They didn't notice how still the girls' hands were, how precise their breathing became. 15 seconds later, the tables would turn. 15 seconds later, the laughter would stop. And those bullies, the ones who thought they ruled the room, would be begging for mercy. Because what they didn't know was that the quiet twins they threatened had army training. Their names were Maya and Malika Carter, twins who shared the same heartbeat, same quiet strength, and a bond that life had tested too many times. They'd grown up in the small Georgia town of Stonehaven, the kind of place where summers were slow, but trouble never seemed to sleep. Their father, Sergeant Daniel Carter, had served 22 years in the Army. He was the kind of man who spoke softly but carried an aura that made everyone listen. Their mother Evelyn was a nurse who believed in compassion before correction, but even she carried a quiet fire. When it came to protecting her girls from childhood, Maya was the thinker, deliberate, measured, the one who always planned 5 steps ahead. Malika was the instinct, quicker, bolder, her strength hidden behind a soft smile. Together, they were balance, calm, and storm, logic and heart. But their peace had been carved from pain. When their father was deployed overseas, they learned the language of survival early, to stay alert. Stay focused. Never depend on anyone to save you. If danger finds you, he'd say before every mission. Remember, fear is just the body asking if the mind's still in charge. They listened. They trained. They learned, years later, when tragedy struck, when their father didn't come home, they didn't break. They built. They joined a local Army cadet training program for youth in honor of him. They learned hand-to-hand combat, tactical awareness, endurance, but most importantly, they learned control. Their mother would watch them spar and whisper, "You two don't need to fight to prove you're strong. You're already warriors. You just fight differently." Years later, both twins were in their 20s, disciplined, educated, calm. They'd moved to Atlanta, working day jobs while helping run a small community center, teaching self-defense to young girls. That Sunday afternoon wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was supposed to be peaceful. They'd finished a long morning of training and decided to grab lunch at a small, family-run restaurant downtown, Marley's Diner. A cozy spot with jazz music and the smell of fried chicken and cornbread filling the air. Maya chose the seat by the window, sunlight painting warm lines across her brown skin. Malika sat across from her, grinning as she poured sweet tea into their glasses. Finally, she sighed. A quiet Sunday with no chaos. "Ah," Maya chuckled. "You say that every week?" They laughed, soft, genuine. Easy. It was the kind of laughter they hadn't shared in a while. Around them, the diner buzzed with life, couples chatting, kids laughing, a waitress humming to the radio. For once, the world felt still. Then the door opened. The laughter dimmed, not all at once, but like a candle losing flame. 2 men walked in, built like ex-athletes, loud voices filling the room before they even reached the counter. Their boots hit the floor like thunder, and their eyes scanned the room, searching for attention. One wore a red jacket, shiny, too new, too proud. The other had a smirk that didn't belong in a place that smelled of peace. They ordered loud, joked louder, made sure everyone heard them. The kind of men who fed on discomfort when they couldn't find an audience. Their eyes landed on Maya and Malika, two quiet women, alone, unbothered. Easy targets. Malika noticed first. She always did. She saw the way one of them whispered something to the other, saw the grin spread slow across his face. She looked at Maya. Maya didn't even turn. She just said quietly, "Ignore them." Well, Malika replied. "Until they give me a reason not to." Maya smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said, "Don't test me, but if you do, you'll regret it." For a few moments, peace held. The twins focused on their meal. The bullies laughed louder at their own jokes. But when one of them muttered something under his breath as he walked past their table, something crude, something meant to provoke, Malika's fork stopped midair. Maya looked up slowly. And in that quiet second, the restaurant began to feel colder. Their father's words echoed in her mind. There will come a day when silence is mistaken for weakness. That's when you remind them what silence really means. Not yet, but she knew the day had just arrived, the air inside Marley's diner changed the moment the men stepped closer. Their voices were heavy, dragging through the silence like boots on gravel. "Hey," the one in the red jacket called, his grin spreading wide. "You two army dolls lost or something?" Maya didn't look up. Malika didn't either. They kept eating, slow, deliberate, refusing to give him what he wanted, attention. But he wasn't the kind of man who could handle being ignored. He leaned against their table, his shadow cutting off the sunlight from the window. His friend stood just behind him, watching with an amused smirk as he drummed his fingers across their napkin holder. "I'm talking to you," louder this time. "You deaf or just rude?" Malika finally lifted her eyes, calm, unreadable. "We're eating," she said softly. "Could you give us some space?" That tone, polite, patient, should have ended it. But men like him didn't understand calm. They only understood power, and he mistook her calm for fear. "Oh, we got ourselves some attitude," he laughed, glancing around for an audience. A few customers lowered their eyes to their plates. No one moved. No one spoke. His friend nudged him. "Leave it, man. Let's go." But he didn't. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're tough, huh? You girls think you can talk like that to me?" Malika's jaw tightened. Maya placed a hand on her twin's wrist, a silent command. Not yet, they'd been here before. Different faces, same kind of danger. They knew that if you stood your ground too early, you gave your enemy a story to twist. So they waited, but the man in red couldn't stand waiting. He grabbed a fry off their plate, tapped it into his mouth, and chewed slow. Staring at Maya like he wanted to see her flinch, she didn't. "Pretty little things like you," he said. Leaning closer, "should learn some manners. You never know when the wrong man might teach you." The words were venom. They stung, not because they were new, but because they were familiar, a reminder of every time strength was tested by arrogance. Malika's eyes darkened. Maya's hand pressed harder against her wrist. "Don't," Maya whispered. Malika's voice was low, steady. "He's crossing a line, I know," Maya replied, "but not yet." No. The waitress, a nervous woman named Lacey, appeared beside them, voice trembling. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to sit down. You're disturbing my customers." The man in red turned his grin on her. "Relax, sweetheart. We're just talking." Lacey looked at the twins apologetically. "Do you want me to call?" "It's fine," Maya interrupted softly. "We're fine." The waitress hesitated, then backed away, eyes darting between them. She'd seen enough fights to know when one was about to start. The red-jacketed man laughed again. "See, they like me. We're friends now." He leaned forward and poked Malika's shoulder. Once, twice, harder the second time. That was his mistake. Malika's eyes flicked down. Following his hand, every motion calculated, every breath measured. She'd been trained to disarm faster than a blink, but she didn't, not yet. Don't touch her again, Maya said quietly. Her tone even, but her words landed like steel. The man froze for half a second, surprised by how sharp her voice cut through the air. Then he smirked, trying to laugh it off. Or what? He sneered. You gonna call your daddy? Oh wait, probably ran off, didn't he? The room gasped. It was a line you don't cross. Maya's eyes rose, slow and cold. There was no visible rage, no outburst, just silence. The kind of silence that grows. Teeth. Malika's breathing changed, measured, controlled. Her father's words replayed in her mind. Control the moment. Don't let the moment control you. But then the second man, the one who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. Let's see how tough these twins really are. He reached out and grabbed Maya's arm. For a second, time stopped. Forks clinked onto plates. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Call 911." Malika was standing before anyone even realized she'd moved. Her chair slid back with a sound that made the hairs on everyone's neck rise. Let her go. The man tightened his grip. Make me. He didn't see it the way her stance shifted. Feet shoulder-width apart, left foot angled. Shoulders loose, breathing silent, a soldier's posture. Maya's eyes locked on her twins. One nod. That was all it took. The man's smirk faded when Malika reached up, not fast, but fluid, and pressed 2 fingers against his wrist. A twist. A pivot. He gasped, stumbling, his body folding forward like paper. Before he could react, she guided his arm down, redirecting his weight. And he hit the floor with a thud that shook the salt shakers on the tables. The other man, the one in red, lunged toward her. But Maya stood now too. Calm, steady. He swung. She stepped aside, catching his arm mid-swing, and used his own momentum to turn him around. In less than a heartbeat, she had him pinned against the counter, his arm bent, hand immobilized. It wasn't aggression. It was precision, quiet, surgical efficiency. Gasps filled the diner. Phones came out. No one moved to stop them. No one dared. The man in red grunted, trying to pull free. What are you? Who are you? Maya's voice was low, steady, terrifyingly calm. You wanted to find out how tough we are. Malika released the second man, letting him crawl backward across the floor, gasping. She turned to her sister, eyes locked. 15 seconds, Maya nodded, and it had indeed taken 15 seconds. The men lay on the floor, not injured, but humiliated. Their arrogance stripped away. No one applauded. No one cheered. The silence was too heavy for that. Maya let go of the man's arm and stepped back. Next time, she said softly, you might want to think before you touch people who didn't invite you. He stared up at her, breathing hard, his face pale. You're crazy, he spat. No, Malika said. We're trained. The waitress, Lacey, finally stepped forward, shaking. Do I need to call someone? Maya turned to her gently. It's okay. We're leaving. They picked up their bags, calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. Behind them, one of the bullies muttered, You think this is over? Maya stopped in the doorway. Her voice was soft, almost kind. It was over 15 seconds ago. Then they were gone. The diners sat in stunned silence. The air heavy with something none of them could name. Not fear, not relief, but respect. The phone cameras had caught everything. Within hours, the video would spread online to women defending themselves with a calm that didn't need words. But for now, in that small diner, no one spoke. The waitress whispered, Who were they? The old man at the counter smiled faintly, eyes thoughtful. Not who, he said. What? He sipped his coffee, still warm, and added, They were soldiers. You could see it in the way they moved. Outside Marley's diner, the city pulsed like a living thing, cars honking, rain glistening against glass, life moving on as if nothing had happened. But inside that tiny restaurant, the air still vibrated with tension. The 2 men now bruised, humiliated, trembling, sat against the counter, trying to catch their breath. The world had tilted on its axis. and the predators suddenly found themselves as prey. Maya and Malika stood quietly by the door. They weren't smiling. They weren't proud. They were composed. The same calm that had invited mockery now radiated power. Then came the sound, a shrill buzz from the man's phone. He looked down. His face went pale. "Dude," he whispered to his friend. "We're on camera." He was right. Every table, every patron had their phones raised. The moment the girls had moved, the diner had turned into a movie set. The clip was already spreading, 2 bullies taken down in seconds by women who looked like they could have been anyone's daughters, sisters, or friends. The man in red scrambled to his feet. "Delete it. All of you delete the damn video." No one moved. No one said a word. Lacey, the waitress, just stared, her hands shaking around her notepad. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself any further." The man turned toward the twins, fury burning through his humiliation. "You think you can humiliate me like that? You think this is over?" Maya tilted her head slightly, eyes sharp but voice still calm. "No, I think it's over because we're letting it be." That sentence, that choice of words, stung him deeper than a punch ever could. He lunged forward again. Malika's eyes flicked to Maya. "Second round?" Maya sighed softly, almost disappointed. "Let's make this the last." The man swung wild, sloppy, desperate. Maya shifted to the side, letting the motion carry him forward, and with a small twist of her wrist, redirected his momentum. His knee hit the floor before his brain even registered the movement. Malika intercepted the second man, who tried to grab a chair. She kicked the leg out from under him, catching his wrist mid-swing and pinning it behind his back with a twist so controlled it was almost graceful. "Stop fighting," she said quietly. "This isn't how you win." But he spat on the floor, his pride louder than his pain. "You think you're special? You're just—" He didn't finish the sentence, because Maya stepped closer. There was no anger in her eyes, just something deeper, colder, born from every lesson their father had drilled into them. "Words like that," she said, her tone even, "have gotten men like you hurt in places far worse than this diner." He swallowed hard. You can't threaten me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm warning you." The door swung open. 2 officers entered, a man and a woman, hands resting casually on their belts. They'd been called by someone outside who thought a fight was breaking out. "What's going on here?" the female officer asked, scanning the room. Lacey spoke up first. "These 2 women defended themselves. These 2 men attacked them." The male officer frowned. "Is that true?" Half the restaurant nodded. Phones went up, screens replaying the footage in silence. The twins stood still, their posture calm, breathing even soldiers at ease. The officers exchanged a look. The female cop, her badge catching the light, asked the men, "You want to press charges?" The man in red hesitated, glancing at the diner's phones at the clear video of him instigating, touching, grabbing. His face twisted. He looked at Maya and Malika again. They didn't look back in anger, just stillness, authority. He swallowed, muttered something under his breath, and shook his head. "No, forget it." The female officer raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" He nodded quickly. "Yeah, it's done." She turned toward the twins. "You ladies okay?" Malika nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just wanted to eat in peace." The cop smiled faintly. "Well, you've earned that." The officers left after taking a quick statement. The diners exhaled, as though someone had opened a window. The tension drained out of the room. But outside, in the rain, the story wasn't over. Maya and Malika walked toward their car, shoes splashing lightly against puddles. Neon lights from the diner reflected in the water, painting streaks of red and blue beneath their feet. Behind them, the 2 men stumbled out, muttering to each other. "This isn't over," one hissed again. Of course she did. She turned slightly, her silhouette framed by the glow of the diner sign. "You don't want to do that," she said calmly. "Or what?" He snapped. "You gonna beat me up again?" Maya stepped beside her, eyes locked on him. "No," she said. "We're going to let your own choices do that," he sneered. You think people are going to side with you? You're nobodies. Just two girls. Malika's lips curved. Not a smile, but something like pity. Then why are you shaking? The man opened his mouth but couldn't speak, because he was shaking. He hadn't even noticed until she said it. The next morning, the video hit the internet like a lightning strike. The caption, "Two bullies pick a fight with twin sisters in a diner. Regretted instantly." Within hours, it was everywhere. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, millions of views, thousands of comments. Those twins are legends. They handled that like, soldiers' calm is the new power.
But
The comments that cut deepest came from people who saw themselves in the story. A young girl wrote, "I was bullied once too. Watching them made me feel like I could stand again." An old veteran commented, "I know that look." Their father must have been one hell of a soldier. Meanwhile, the two men tried to spin the story. They claimed it was staged, exaggerated. But every angle, every witness, every video said otherwise. They lost their jobs. Their reputations crumbled. The internet wasn't kind to bullies, and for the first time in their lives, they were forced to live with the kind of silence they once mocked. For Maya and Malika, the story wasn't about revenge. It was about something else entirely: control. They'd been taught that strength isn't how hard you hit. It's how long you can hold your ground without losing yourself. That night, sitting in their small apartment, they watched the video once. Just once. Then Maya closed her laptop. "Let them talk," she said. "We don't need the spotlight." Malika leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "You think Dad would have been proud?" Maya smiled faintly. "No," she said. "He would have said, 'Next time.'" "Finish your meal first." They laughed, soft, quiet, genuine. But the twist wasn't over yet. 3 days later, there was a knock at their door. When Maya opened it, she found the female officer from that night standing there, the one who had handled the scene at the diner. "Afternoon. Mind if I come in?" They nodded, letting her step inside. She glanced around the apartment, tidy, minimalist, decorated with medals and framed photos of their father in uniform. "I came to say thank you," she said finally. Maya frowned slightly. "For what?" "For reminding people what discipline looks like," the officer said. "I watched that video more than once. You didn't lose your temper. You didn't escalate. You defended yourselves, and you controlled the narrative. That's rare." Malika smiled softly. "We learned from the best." The officer nodded, glancing at a photo on the wall, Sergeant Daniel Carter, smiling in uniform. She exhaled slowly. "He trained with my brother. Iraq, 2008. He saved his life." The twins froze. For the first time since the diner, the calm broke, not from fear, but emotion. "Your brother," Maya began softly. The officer nodded. "Yeah. Name's Miles Tate. He always said Daniel Carter was the reason he made it home. I guess the world finds strange ways to repay favors." The room fell quiet, not heavy, just full. After the officer left, Maya and Malika sat together on the couch. The hum of the city outside fading into the distance. "Full circle," Malika whispered. "Yeah," Maya said, smiling through her tears. "Full circle." Later that night, they walked through downtown quiet streets, city lights reflecting off wet pavement. People recognized them now. Some waved, others whispered, but they didn't care about fame. They cared about the message. They stopped by the diner again. Marley's sign flickered above the window, just like before. Inside, everything looked the same, except for one thing. Near the counter, a small frame hung on the wall. Inside was a still shot from the video, Maya and Malika standing calm, composed, side by side. Underneath, a plaque read, "Strength is not in the noise you make. It's in the silence you control." That was the real twist, not the fight, not the fame, but the world realizing that quiet didn't mean weak, that peace could still carry power. For years, they'd been told to keep their heads down, to stay small, to avoid confrontation. But that night, they proved that silence isn't surrender. It's strategy, And sometimes when the world mistakes kindness for fear, it takes 15 seconds to remind it otherwise. The world didn't stop the next day. But for Maya and Malika, it felt like it had slowed down. Every notification, every headline, every comment seemed to orbit around one moment, 15 seconds inside a diner that changed everything at first. They ignored it. They went on their morning run through Central Park, the rhythm of their shoes steady against the pavement. The autumn air bit at their skin, crisp and alive. The city skyline cutting across the clouds. For them, training was meditation, not about building strength, but about maintaining control. Control had saved them that night. Control had turned chaos into silence. But as they stopped by the fountain, Maya's phone buzzed again and again. She sighed. Checking the screen, hundreds of messages, mentions, interview requests, the twin soldiers hashtag 15 seconds of silence, hashtag Marley's diner incident, Malika. Glanced over her shoulder. It's everywhere, isn't it? Everywhere, Maya muttered. Malika chuckled softly. Guess we went viral, Maya said dryly, pocketing the phone. Just what I always wanted? Fame from a fight I didn't even start. But under her calm tone, something stirred. Not pride. Not excitement. Something heavier, the weight of being seen. Later that morning, their quiet apartment was filled with the sound of the news. Two unidentified sisters defended themselves against harassment in what's now being called the diner defense. The women displayed impressive combat control and restraint. The anchor's voice played over a blurred version of the video, but even pixelated. The twins' calmness radiated through the screen. Malika turned off the TV. It's strange, she said. The world only notices you when you fight back. Maya looked at her twin, their resemblance so precise it sometimes felt like she was looking in a mirror. Maybe it's not about fighting back, she said quietly. Maybe it's about how you do it. By the third day, the diner itself had become a small tourist spot. People came to take photos at the booth where it happened. The owner, old Mr. Marley, shook his head in disbelief as he poured coffee. 30 years I've been serving eggs and pancakes, he muttered. Never thought I'd be famous because two girls had to teach grown men manners. Lacey, the waitress, smiled shyly when people asked her about that night. They were calm, she'd say. Not scared, just calm. Like they already knew how it would end. Meanwhile, the bullies, Sean and Eric, were learning a different kind of lesson. Sean's phone hadn't stopped buzzing either, but not with support. His boss called him in, showed him the video, said two words that crushed him harder than any punch ever could. You're fired. Eric's girlfriend left him the next day. His friends ghosted him. Everywhere they went, whispers followed. Those are the guys from the video. At first, they were angry, furious. They blamed everyone but themselves. But anger doesn't last forever, not when reality hits harder than any fight. So, on the 5th day after the incident, Sean showed up at the diner again, alone. His red jacket was gone. His voice, once loud, now quiet. Marley recognized him immediately. You've got some nerve showing your face here. Sean didn't argue. He just nodded and sat down at an empty booth. Yeah, he said softly. I know. He waited for hours. And then, as if fate had planned it, the twins walked in. They froze for a moment when they saw him. He stood up, nervous, hands trembling. I'm not here to start anything, he said quickly. I needed to talk. Maya and Malika exchanged a glance. Silence passed between them, the kind only twins could speak fluently. Malika nodded once. Okay, she said. Talk, Sean swallowed. I don't expect forgiveness. I saw the video 100 times, and every time I thought I looked strong. But the more I watched, the smaller I looked. You weren't fighting, you were teaching. Maya's eyes softened, but her voice stayed measured. We weren't trying to teach you anything. We just wanted to be left alone. I know, he said, his voice breaking. But you did teach me, and maybe that's the point. I grew up thinking strength meant talking louder, standing taller. You showed me it's the opposite. He paused, struggling to find the words. It's control. Silence fell. Marley stopped pretending to wipe tables and listened from behind the counter. Malika looked at Sean for a long moment. "You can't undo what you did," she said finally. "But you can choose who you are after it." He nodded, eyes wet. "I already started. I signed up for a community defense program. Self-control, de-escalation training. I figured it's time I learned what real discipline looks like." Maya's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. "Then maybe there's hope for you yet." That night, the twins walked home in the soft rain, the reflections blurring in the puddles. Malika broke the silence first. "You think he meant it?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, people can change when they've been humbled enough. Dad would have been proud," Malika said quietly. Maya smiled. "He always said strength wasn't about being feared. It was about being respected." Weeks passed. The online noise faded, as it always does. But something lingered. People remembered the story, not because of violence, but because of restraint. Schools played the video in assemblies. Self-defense instructors analyzed their composure. News outlets called them the calm within chaos. They got offers, interviews, sponsorships, even a reality show deal. They turned them all down. Instead, they used the attention for something bigger. They started a foundation. Project 15, named after the 15 seconds it took to turn fear into control. The foundation's mission: teach self-defense, emotional discipline, and conflict resolution to young women, especially in underrepresented communities. It started small: a rented gym, a few mats, a handful of girls who didn't make eye contact at first. But week by week, those girls stood taller, moved sharper, spoke stronger. Maya and Malika didn't preach. They taught through calm, through action. "Your silence is not your weakness," Maya told them. "It's your weapon," Malika added. And soon, that small gym became a movement. Meanwhile, Sean, the former bully, showed up one evening at their foundation. He wasn't in a red jacket anymore. Just a plain t-shirt, humility stitched into every wrinkle on his face. He offered to volunteer cleaning mats, setting up chairs. Anything. Malika looked at him for a long moment, then handed him a broom. "Every soldier starts somewhere." Sean smiled faintly. "I'll take it." That was the beginning of his redemption. Months later, Project 15 held its first public event, a citywide self-defense seminar in the very diner district where it all began. Over 300 women showed up. Journalists, too. Even the female officer who'd once stepped in that night stood in the front row. Proud, Maya walked to the small stage, microphone in hand. The crowd fell silent. 6 months ago, she began, we didn't plan to become a story. We didn't plan to fight anyone. We just wanted to eat dinner. But life doesn't ask if you're ready. It just asks if you'll respond. She paused, glancing at Malika beside her. And that night, we didn't respond with anger. We responded with control. Because that's what our father taught us. Control saves lives. Control builds peace. Control changes people. The audience watched, moved. Even Sean, standing in the back, broom still in hand, wiped at his eyes. Malika took the mic next. "Power doesn't come from your voice," she said softly. "It comes from your choices. You don't have to shout to be strong. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who can end the noise." The crowd erupted in applause. It wasn't the applause that mattered. It was what it meant. It meant the message had landed. Later that evening, after the event, twins sat at a booth in Marley's again, the same booth where it all began. 2 cups of coffee. Same rain tapping the glass. Marley walked over, grinning. "Never thought I'd say this," he said, "but you two might have just saved this old diner." Maya laughed. "How so?" "People come here for more than pancakes now," he said. "They come here to remember what calm looks like." He nodded toward the framed quote still hanging by the door. "Strength is not in the noise you make. It's in the silence you control." Malika smiled. "Guess it stuck." Sighed. The city glowed, alive, electric. The kind of night that made everything feel possible. Maya turned to her twin, voice soft. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if we'd lost control?" Malika looked out at the rain. Every day, she admitted. But that's why we train. So we don't. They clinked their coffee mugs together. To control, Maya said. To peace, Malika added. And for a moment, in that tiny diner, under the hum of neon lights, two sisters sat in silence, the kind that wasn't empty, but earned. The incident had started as a story about confrontation, but it ended as something greater, a reminder that the loudest victory isn't the one shouted from rooftops. It's the one whispered in calm, steady voices that say, "You can hurt me, you can test me, but you will not make me lose myself." That was the legacy of Project 15. That was the true consequence of control. The diner was quiet again. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear, the kind that comes from peace. Outside, the rain had stopped. The neon lights reflected off the wet pavement, shimmering like memory. Marley had closed early, but he let the twins stay. He always did. They sat in the same booth where it all began, same cracked leather seats, same corner window that caught the glow of the streetlights. Maya stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, the spoon clinking softly against the mug. Malika leaned back, eyes half closed, listening to the hum of the old jukebox that hadn't worked right in years. "You ever think about it?" Maya said after a while. "About what?" "How everything changed in 15 seconds. Malika smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's strange. People talk about it like it was something big. But for us, it was just survival," Maya finished softly. They both fell quiet again. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was home. They didn't set out to become symbols. They didn't wake up that morning thinking they'd start a movement. They just wanted a meal. A quiet night. A moment of peace. But sometimes, fate doesn't ask. It simply unfolds. Those 15 seconds in the diner, those brief, controlled moments, became something the world needed to see. Not because of violence, not because of revenge, but because of restraint in a world where everyone wants to shout louder, prove harder, dominate more. These two women whispered back, "We don't need to shout to be strong." And somehow, the whole world heard them. The story spread far beyond that small city. Project 15 grew, not just as a self-defense movement, but as an idea. Across schools, colleges, community centers, even correctional programs, people began teaching what Maya and Malika had embodied that night. Control, discipline, grace under fire. Videos showed teenage girls practicing calm breathing before sparring drills. Teachers wrote, "Strength equals control," on classroom boards. Even police departments invited the twins to teach crisis de-escalation training. The same kind of composure that had kept a diner from turning into a disaster. Maya always said the same thing at every talk. It's not about being fearless. It's about being steady when fear shows up. Months turned into a year. Life settled into something beautiful and ordinary. Maya started teaching tactical breathing techniques to trauma survivors. Malika began leading workshops for young men, the kind of boys who reminded her of the bullies that night because she'd come to understand. Something deep. Anger is often just pain in disguise. And when you teach someone control, you're not just teaching them to fight less, you're teaching them to heal more. One evening, after a long day of training, the twins visited their father's grave. The cemetery was quiet. The sun set painting the sky in strokes of gold and violet. They knelt before the marble headstone, SGT, Daniel Carter, calm under fire. Malika traced her fingers over the engraved words. "You'd probably laugh if you saw us now," she said softly. Maya chuckled through her tears. "Yeah," he'd say. "Took you long enough to use that training for something useful." They sat there a while, letting the wind move through the trees, that same steady rhythm that always made them feel safe. Maya finally whispered, "He taught us control, but I think he really meant compassion." Lika nodded. "Yeah, because only someone who's truly strong can afford to be gentle." That's what the world misunderstood for so long, the difference between fear and respect, between loudness and leadership. You see, anyone can hit, anyone can shout, anyone can dominate a room with noise, but it takes real power to stay calm when the world tests you. To stand still when you want to swing? To hold back when every muscle screams for release? Real power doesn't rush. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. 1 year later, Marley's Diner hosted its first anniversary event not to relive the fight, but to celebrate peace. The twins stood by the same booth, surrounded by young women they'd trained, local families, veterans, and even Sean, the man who had once been their enemy. Now, a volunteer and friend, he stood before the crowd, voice shaking slightly. "They could have broken me that night," he said. "Instead, they woke me up." The audience fell silent. "I learned something from these women," he continued. "You don't change the world by fighting harder. You change it by standing still long enough for people to see who you really are." Applause filled the diner, not wild, but warm. Honest. Maya smiled quietly. Malika's eyes glistened. They didn't need to speak. The moment said enough. In a world that confuses silence with weakness, they reminded us that silence can be the sharpest weapon of all, because silence holds space. It demands presence. It forces people to listen. And when that silence is backed by strength, it can move mountains. The story of the twin sisters became a parable whispered across classrooms and shared through screens. The calm ones aren't fragile. The quiet ones aren't timid. The soft-spoken are not weak. They are the ones who think before they act, who breathe before they break, who choose peace when chaos calls their name. They are the ones who build the world back up when noise tears it down. That night, as Maya and Malika walked home from the diner, the city was glowing again. The air was cool, carrying the sound of traffic and laughter. And somewhere, faintly, the hum of their father's favorite old jazz tune played from a passing car. Malika looked over. "Do you ever think about how all this started with one choice?" Maya nodded. "Yeah, we chose not to react. We chose to respond." Malika smiled softly. "And that changed everything. Maybe that's what life really is. A series of moments where you're given a choice. To react or respond, to break or to breathe, to hit back or to stand your ground with quiet dignity. And in those moments, the universe watches. Because true strength doesn't come from what you destroy. It comes from what you protect." The camera pans up. The twins walk side by side down the street, their silhouettes framed by the golden streetlights. One pauses, looks up at the stars, smiles. Then the screen fades to black, and the final line appears. White against the darkness, real strength doesn't shout. It protects in silence.